So here looking at verse 8 here, this is Proverbs chapter 8, verse 18. And again in different translations, we see it saying in the King James, the words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. The Septuagint says, fear casts down the slothful, and the souls of the effeminate shall hunger. Interesting words. The Sefer, the words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. The BSB, the words of a gossip are like choice morsels that go down into the inmost being. And the ESV says the words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the belly. And here in the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, it says, the lazy are thrown down by fear, and the souls of the effeminate ones shall hunger. So it's very interesting. I'm just looking at it right now that the Septuagint is way different than what we see in the Masoretic text. But looking back at the words, we see that it says the words, and we have the word debar, which is for a word, by implication, a matter, as spoken of, thing, adverbially a cause. So a word, a matter, and a cause would be debar. And then we have it going down to the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, H1697. And we have it here. Has three different definitions, but one definition is a word, like an arrangement of words. Two, a thing or thing as something that is arranged. In Hebrew, thought words contain substance just as physical objects do. And then our third definition in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible is plague, the reordering of a population. And then we come back down here to the Brown Driver Briggs, and we have the definition for speech, word, speaking, or thing. And you have four different ways that they have brought it down in, I would say, in different contexts, it could be used. So it says the words of a talebearer. Um, and so it's interesting, just thinking about it because there's different ways that it said it could be used with the Strong's Concordance, a word, a matter, or a cause. So that's interesting. So it says the words of a talebearer. Here, this word is H5372, nirgan in the Hebrew, from an unused root meaning to roll to pieces, a slander. That's interesting. To roll to pieces. Then it says a slander. In the King James, they've used it as talebearer and whisperer. Now, in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, for this word 5372, you see it says whisperer. And the parent root, it would say a quiet whisper to be unheard or in slander. So it's something told in secret, right? The Brown Driver Briggs says to murmur or whisper. And then the two different definitions underneath that, which would be in context again, it would be murmurers or backbite, slander, talebearer, or backbiter, are as wounds. And this word wounds here is laham, depending on your pronunciation, or it's laham. And it says properly to burn in, that is to rankle. That's interesting. I've never really seen this word before, but to rankle, it says to burn in or figuratively to rankle. 3859 in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, and it just means wound right here. But the parent root of it, it would probably be bound with bandages. That would be the case. Looking at the Brown Driver Briggs, you see it says to gulp, swallow greedily. So to gulp or swallow greedily, and it reminds me of somebody's just drinking all the juice or the water that's in the jug. You're doing it greedily, and it's interesting because I'm trying to understand how that goes with wounds, you know, to swallow greedily or to gulp. And in the King James, they've only used it as wounds. So it's pretty interesting. It's an interesting word just looking at the way the Brown Driver Briggs breaks it down in comparison to the Strong's Concordance. But we see that the Strong's Concordance again is to burn in, that is figuratively to rankle. That's an interesting word. And then it says they. Of course, this is more of a connector word from 1931 in the Hebrew. It says they, only used when emphatic. So it's they, and then it says go down. And here we have this word in the Hebrew is yarad, H3381, to descend, literally to go downwards or conventionally to a lower region as the shore, a boundary, the enemy, etc., or figuratively to fall. Then it says causatively to bring down in all above applications. So we have the basic definition is to descend for yarad. And then we come down to the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible for this definition of H3381, and is to descend. And if you go to the parent root, it does say the action is to descend. As the man enters the tent, he descends down on the sheet to sit. So he lowers himself down to sit down on the sheet that's on the ground. And the Brown Driver Briggs, the main definition is to go down, descend, decline, march down, or sink down. And as you see, you'll get many different ways to say it in different parts of speech. And they go down into the innermost. And so this word for the into the innermost parts, the main word we're going to find is kader, and it says an apartment, usually literally. So it's usually literally an apartment. And you have the word H2315, Kadar, and it says here in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, it says a chamber, a place surrounded by walls, an inner place as hidden or secret. And the Brown Driver Briggs says chamber, room, parlor, innermost or inward part within. And so again, going back to the Strong's Concordance, it says an apartment, usually literally. So it's usually or literally a place, right? It's a specific place. And I like what here you also see in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible that says a place surrounded by walls, an inner place as hidden or secret. And where is that? It says of the belly. So looking at the word for belly, it's H990, baten. Baten, it says, means to be hollow, the belly, especially the womb, also the bosom or body of anything. Looking at the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, H990, it says belly. And then if you look at the parent root, it says the middle of the body as a division. So it's literally the belly, the stomach, right? And here you see the Brown Driver Briggs. They say belly, womb, or body. And then they got 1A, that's the belly, or just belly and abdomen. But the interesting thing here, and I want to share with this one on the Brown Driver Briggs, you have 1A1, 1A2, and 1A3 as a definition. And you have as a seat of hunger, as a seat of mental faculties, and of depth of Sheol, figuratively. So that's pretty interesting for that word. It goes a little bit deeper than just the stomach itself, but what the stomach could be a part of is a seat of hunger, right? Which everybody can attest to, that you've been hungry before. But it also says as seat of mental faculties. And then when you think about the belly, it's the depth of Sheol. So the inner, like this depth of Sheol, could be looked at and called the belly. So looking at the words again, we see it says the words. Now, this word, as we looked at it in the Hebrew, it doesn't necessarily just mean only words written down, but it could be words as a matter or something spoken of. And it says of a talebearer. And this word, I think, is going to be the one that's a powerful word that we need to look into. But what does a talebearer do? According to the Strong's Concordance, it rolls to pieces. So the goal for a talebearer is to roll a person, I would say, into pieces. It's to break somebody down. And that's what the talebearers, it sounds like their position is to do. Or it could be a slanderer. And we could look up the definitions for those. But now, what it does say is to trample on one by slandering, according to the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible. So the way to break somebody down is to trample on them by slandering. Now, they do say to whisper, because you see in other translations, they use it as whisper or slander. Now, the one in the BSB says gossip, and I think that one would kind of, I think there's another word in the Hebrew for gossip. I think there's another word for all of these in the Hebrew. So, because you see in the King James, they've only used this word nergan for talebearer and whisper. So we can always look that up as well. But it says that the words of a talebearer or whisperer or slanderer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. The words that are being expressed of somebody, they're harsh, right? They're harsh like a wound. It's painful, and it goes down into the innermost parts of the belly. Now, let's look at the Septuagint as well, though, because we have a verse here that looks a little bit different, and it says, "Fear casts down the slothful, and the souls of the effeminate shall hunger." Now, looking at what it says in the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, if we're going to use some of what they're saying, the lazy are thrown down by fear. And then in the Greek language, you're going to have this word for lazy, G3636, okneros. Okneros is tardy, that is indolent, irksome. And then in the King James, they've used it as grievous or slothful. And it says slow in the mounts, slow, slothful, indolent, or idle. And then they use it in as tedious or troublesome. So the Thayer's Greek lexicon says sluggish, slothful, or backward. So it says the lazy are thrown down. And here we have the word for thrown down as katabalo, which is to throw down, to literally cast down or lay something down. It says in the mounds to cast down, to lay down, lay a foundation, right? So that's katabalo, which would be to cast down. So the lazy are thrown down by fear. And then you have this word for fear, phobos, which just says alarm or fright, to be put in fear, alarm or fright. And then again, the mounts would say fear, terror, affright, astonishment, amazement, trembling, concern. Oh, trembling, concern, one full, reverential, fear, awe, respect, difference. Okay. And then here we have fear, dread, or terror in the Thayer's Greek lexicon for this. So it says the lazy or the slothful are thrown down by fear. And then the Septuagint kind of flips it back up, it puts it in a different direction, because then it says fear casts down the slothful. So it's basically saying the lazy are thrown down by fear. So the slothful are thrown down by fear. And then it says, and the souls of effeminate ones shall hunger. So let's go look at these words here, because we see the word for souls, suke, which it says in the Strong's Concordance, breath, that is by implication, spirit. Abstractly or concretely, the animal sentiment principle only, it says, thus distinguished on the one hand from G 4151, which is the rational and immortal soul, and on the other from G 2222, which is mere vitality, even of plants. And then it goes on to say these terms thus exactly correspond respectively to the Hebrew H5315, H7307, and H2416. So suke, they're saying, again, you can go through this and look at what they're corresponding to, it says in the Hebrew. And then you get the word nefesh, that the word suke would correspond with. You have another word, ruach, that the word suke would correspond with. And then you have the word 2416, which is, well, I would say is K, but it looks like it says ke or kai, and then that one also corresponds, and that one means alive. The word suke in the Greek, in the mounts, breath, the principle of animal, the life. So it's basically saying the souls are the life. And then we have this word effeminate ones. And then here it says the souls of the effeminate. And so I want to look up that word, uh, G407, and see what they have to say about that word here. And we have this word for G407, Andrid Zamai, which it says to act manly, to act manly. So I'm kind of questioning why they say of effeminate, of the effeminate, but it says to act manly. Then it goes on to say quit like men. Well, let's look at the root word of this one. And you have G435, a primary word, a man, aner, a man properly as an individual male. Going down to the mounts, a male person of full age and stature, as opposed to a child or female, a husband, right? The reference to the sex of a man or of a person, of a male. I'm just kind of confused because a feminine seems like it would point to somebody that is not a man. It's saying that he's a man, but he's acting manly, which means he's not really manly. Maybe that's the definition of what they're trying to use. But it says the souls of effeminate ones shall hunger. And they use this word for hunger, which is pinao. Pinao, it says, is to famish. So it's to famish, to hunger, right? Figuratively, to crave. So pretty interesting way that they broke it down in the Septuagint, but it's to hunger in the mounds, to be hungry, to be exposed, to be hungry, be famished, right? To hunger, be hungry. So it's an interesting difference in between the two when we look at the Masoretic text compared to the Septuagint. We see that it says in the Masoretic text that the words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. And then we have the words it says in the Septuagint, fear casts down the slothful, and the souls of the effeminate shall hunger. Whether you want to talk about one or the other, they're both interesting. But one question that comes to mind is this word for talebearer, and what I think about talebearer and what does that mean in comparison to what we can be called as, when I think about where is that, is there a gray line? Is there a line that's been drawn that we're going to see that a talebearer is different? And because we have the word gossip, we have these other words that are coming up. So we can go and look at some of these words as well, just to kind of, because I would like to bring up how there's other words that they use in the scriptures for the word gossip. And so I'm going to pull up the Blue Letter Bible so that way we can see that there's other words that they use. So here I'm going to pull up right here. This is the Blue Letter Bible, and then I'm going to put up in the word gossip and see what other words, because translations are using other words, but I want to see what else we could find. So let's go to the NLT here. Let's see. Oh, so we don't have the word gossip, it looks like, in the King James. So that's pretty interesting as we're looking at it right now. So gossip's not in the King James. The word gossip itself, maybe it's spelled different. Um, Let me go back. Watch this. I'm gonna go to, so in Leviticus 19:16 it says, "Do not spread slanderous gossip among your people. Do not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is threatened. I am Yahuwah." And here, let's see what word they have for the word gossip there. Uh, it's the word slander. So it's H7400, Rakil. So this is another word. It's not the same word we're dealing with today. But as you see that they use the word slander, talebearer here. Um, so maybe looking at the word slander, and we can look at that as, well, yeah. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that we're talking about certain words that get used in certain times in the Bible, and is it always going to be constant? And what's the definitions of all these words? So this word slander here, you see that when you pull it up into the Hebrew, they have it used for one, two, three, four, five different ways. And you have the word rakil, ragal, lasan, dopi, and then you have diba. And so these are different words that we have for the word slander. And then if I pull up the word tailbearer, and then for the word tailbearer, we have two different words. So we have the word rakil again, but this time we have nergan. And here we have the word nergan, and this is the word that we are dealing with today from an unused root word to mean to roll into pieces. But the other way that they've used it in the one I looked right now in the lexicon, you see that they also use this word rakil, which they use for slander. But the word slander here, it says, this is the other word that they use the word talebearer for in the King James, but it's the word rakil. I just want to show different words that they use that are really similar. And it says a scandal monger as traveling about. So it's, and then in the King James version, you'll see it used as slander, carry tales, or talebearer. And then here in the Brown Driver Briggs, they use it as talebearer or informer. That's pretty interesting. All of going about in slander, right? Goes of slander, men of slander in the Brown Driver Briggs. And then if the Gesenius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon says a slander or detraction, then they use it as slanders, go about for the sake of slandering. And it's used 6 times in the Bible, in the Old Testament, showing us that there's the different ways it's getting used. And I think that's what I want to get down to as well when we're talking about what a talebearer is and what a slanderer is, because there's something that is happening when the person is slandering. It says that they're rolling somebody into pieces. That's pretty interesting. You know what I'm saying? They're rolling somebody into pieces, and then it hurts. It hurts. It goes down into the belly, into the innermost parts. And then when we looked at the word valley, we seen that it was a seat. It was a place where when you talk about seat, we're not talking about a chair, but where things can settle. Here, let me go here. I'm going to look up this. We looked up the word gossip as well. And this came up in the NLT, but it comes up here in some of these New Testament words. And so I'm going to pull up the Romans 129, and we're going to look up this word here for the Romans 129 and see it says here they use the word and because they use the S at the end. So in the King James, it was using an S at the end. But here's the word in the King James for the word gossips, see through restes. And this one's only used one time as whisper in the King James, and it says a secret culminator. So a whisper, a secret, slander, detractor. And it's used in that one's going to be used in Romans 129. And then when we go to the other one that they use the word gossips with the plural, or this one's no plural, 2 Corinthians 12:20. And the verse says, for I am afraid that when I come, I won't like what I find, and you won't like my response. I'm afraid that I will find quarreling, jealousy, anger, selfishness, slander, gossip, arrogance, and disorderly behavior. And you see in 2 Corinthians 12:20, there's slander in there and gossip. So that's pretty interesting. But going to the interlinear, we're going to look at that word that they use for gossip as well. At the end, they use the word gossip here. C3 ismos. Here we have the word for whispering. Again, this one here is by implication a slanderer, probably akin to the word that we probably just looked at, whispering or a secret detraction. To whisper or speak into one's ear, that's what the Thayer's Greek lexicon says, a whispering like a secret slandering. Here we have that in 2 Corinthians 12:20. So I just want to bring those words out when we're looking at the verse that we're looking at today. And then we have the word, I just want to bring this one out since we've seen it, katalalia, right? And this is in the same verse. And this one's used as backbiting or evil speaking in the King James. Here they say defamation in the Strong's Concordance, defamation or evil speaking. So that one what got used in 2 Corinthians 12:20. I was only bringing that out because you have both words getting used here in that same verse, slander and gossip. And this word is for defamation. What we're looking at today is dealing with this area of the words of a talebearer. And in specific, this word here, it just means, or it's a powerful word because it says meaning to roll to pieces. So a slanderer. So it's something that you're doing to intentionally, right? It's an intentional hurt, right? Words that are intentionally to roll somebody into pieces. Part B would seem like it would be when the person finds out and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. Or it could, part B of the verse could be also when you tell the person you're speaking to and it goes into their innermost parts of the belly. The word belly, when we looked at the Brown Driver Briggs, it says as seat of mental faculties. It doesn't necessarily mean the stomach, but it could be the stomach, and in the stomach is a place of mental faculties where they get held on to. I think this is an interesting verse, but just want to share some of those breakdowns and see what y'all think about that one today. All right. Well, praise Yahuwah. This is Proverbs chapter 18, verse 8. Shalom, brother.